Kevin Williams Weather Chat, Finger Lakes Morning News guest interviews, and show podcasts. The place to start is the listen link at the top of our homepage, FingerLakesDailyNews.com. The best weather team on the radio. From the Weather Center, I'm Kevin Williams. I'm meteorologist Ken McKinley. From the Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Josh Nicholas. 98.1 and 1590 WAUB.
Good morning, it's 8:38, Finger Lakes Morning News. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd. On June 4th, the Auburn City Council will vote on a proposed budget for 2015 to 2016. It'll cap off what really has been an uneventful budget year. Joining us for one final discussion about the budget is City Manager Doug Selby. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Joe.
Is there relief at all that it's almost over?
Yeah, we're heading into the home stretch now. The council will vote on the budget on June 4th. That's the plan anyway.
That's the plan.
And it's been a pretty good process so far this year, and we're looking forward to wrapping it up.
I can seldom recall, of course, I don't have the context that people who've lived in the city longer than I, but I can seldom recall a process anywhere that has really been as quiet as this one.
Well, it's taken a lot of work, I think, by both city staff, our comptroller, Laura Wells, and the city council too. You know, their participation has been important as we've developed the budget, and it's been a pretty well laid out plan, and we've stuck to our schedule, and we're approaching the end now.
How much money are we talking about in this budget proposal?
Well, we're actually about $300,000 lower in expenditures than we were last year. So we're in the $32 million range for our general fund budget. And what has happened is we've reduced costs. We've started to do a lot of things that have resulted in long-term savings. And so we're seeing those savings materialize this year.
The theme of this budget process has been uneventful. Not a lot of arguing, not a lot of counselors sort of going into business for themselves like we've seen in the past here in Auburn and elsewhere. I'm sure you from in Vegas may have seen stuff like that. What do you attribute this year's kind of I don't want to say a simple budget process, because nothing about a budget is simple, but what do you attribute to this year's really understated kind of low volume process?
I think it has to do with a couple things. One, with stability in the city council. We have counselors that have been through the process a number of times. They know how it's going to unfold, and they know the ins and outs of the budget process. And then we, our staff, again, our comptroller has done an exceptional job of cleaning up some of the things in the budget that had been confusing in the past. We still have a little bit of work to do in that area, but it's become a little easier, I think, for all of us to understand the process and follow it through.
What about the 5-year plan? Has that been helpful in putting this together and keeping it from reaching a certain crescendo?
It has. I think it's given us a focal point, which we didn't have in previous years' budgets, to look at how this budget's going to fit into that 5-year financial plan.
We're talking with Auburn City Manager Doug Selby. Again, the budget vote is expected to take place on Thursday, this coming Thursday, June 4th, beginning at 6 o'clock. If the vote does not happen, for whatever reason on Thursday, maybe a counselor is absent, whatever happens, does it get moved to the because we are sort of at the end of this cycle. It has to happen in the next couple of weeks.
Right, it has to be approved before the end of the month. If it doesn't get approved on June 4th, there could be a special meeting, or it could be held over to one of our regular Thursday night meetings.
But I guess there's no reason to believe that a vote won't take place on Thursday.
I believe there will be a vote. I hesitate to forecast the outcome of council votes because it sometimes surprises me.
I wonder, people who have not been following it week to week, who haven't been paying close attention to our conversations and conversations we've had with other officials, what's the bottom line that the people of Auburn need to know about this proposed budget, which goes up for a vote on Thursday?
Well, we're staying within the tax cap. The tax levy increase is 1.8%. What that equates to for a $100,000 taxable property is about $192 a year. For that, we continue all of the services we've had in the past, even though we've seen costs escalate for chemicals and fuel and labor. Insurance costs have gone up to double digits. We've been able to contain enough of that to continue to provide the services for that small levy.
So it doesn't sound like people are going to notice very many, if any, earth-shattering changes. It's going to be sort of business as usual, a few extra dollars maybe, but it's going to be business as usual for the most part. For the most part,
right.
Our guest is City Manager Doug Selby here on the Finger Lakes Morning News. We're talking about the budget proposal. It's gone through a few different drafts, so the budget that will be voted on Thursday is not really the same budget that you presented back in early in the spring.
There have been really 3 versions presented. One was really a working document. It wasn't a balanced budget. It basically was right out of the gate, here's what we think we need to spend, and we saw a fairly large gap, approaching $800,000. The second budget was balanced. That was provided on May 14th. There was subsequent input from the City Council, some refinements from staff, and the budget that was presented for a public hearing on May 28th incorporated all of that, and that is the same budget that is presented for the vote on June 4th.
Again, that vote will take place at 6 o'clock. It is part of the regular City Council meeting, so there will be other business on Thursday, but obviously the budget vote gets all the attention.
Right.
What, as you, early on in the process, as you and the comptroller and department heads were all sitting around putting together was it the working plan? Is that the term you used?
Yes.
When you all sat down to put that together, knowing that this was not going to be the budget that would get a final vote on June 4th, how specific did you get with that working plan, that first draft?
It was fairly detailed. There's 40-some pages to it, hundreds of line items, so it was very detailed.
So it wasn't just a summary of, here's what we need, here's what we would like to have, here's what the departments want. It was as detailed as the budget that will be voted on Thursday.
Yes. And the reason we did that was just so we can disclose and be transparent about how this process works and how it unfolds and what was asked for, what got cut, what got adjusted.
You mentioned the word transparent. Seems like that was a real key factor this year. Every single budget document that a city councilor has had has been on the website, auburnny.gov. It's there for anyone to see. I asked the mayor this yesterday on this program. He said that transparency is one of the key factors in why this really was a quiet budget season. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do think it helps. I do think it helps for everybody to have access to the information. And I think it's some comfort, even if people don't look at it, to know that it's there if they want to see it. And it can be confusing and complicated, but you can, we're always willing to try to explain it, and we tried to provide it in as readily as consumable form as possible. And really thanks to our city clerk, Chuck Mason, we started this last year. We started putting all those documents out, and this year I think we did even a better job.
It also seems maybe one other factor in why this was a painless, again, it's a relative term, but a rather painless procedure, is it seemed to have started earlier this year than it has in years past.
We always really don't talk much about it, but we're always working on the budget. It doesn't always reach the level of a discussion at the public meetings. So this year was really somewhat the same. We'd worked on the budget even before the beginning of the calendar year, and then we really got into it after December.
So as the council votes on 15 to 16 Thursday, are you already starting to think about 16 to 17, or do you at least want to get through the vote and then we'll worry about the next fiscal year down the road?
Well, we're always thinking ahead, and that's part of our financial plan, is to always plan ahead. So it's a continuum for us. The approval of the budget is something of a milestone, but we're right back into it after that.
All right, so once again, the budget vote for 2015 to 2016 is this coming Thursday night, June 4th. It begins, the meeting begins at 6 o'clock. You can go there live at City Hall. You can watch it on auburnny.gov. You can follow along on Twitter and Facebook. You can do anything. I want to ask you a couple other things, Doug, while we have you. We're talking with Auburn City Manager Doug Selby. Road projects. South Street still seeing some work near City Hall toward, was it, not Metcalf. Metcalf is where it begins. Trying to think what the... Lincoln, there you go. Of course it would be Lincoln. That would make sense. I can't believe I didn't think of that. How is it going? Is it almost done?
They're getting ready to do the final surface. Some people might think it's done, and we've had complaints that the manholes are sticking up a little bit, but that's because there's another layer of pavement to go down. And once that's complete, the road will be wrapped up and we'll be done.
I will say it is in much better shape, even in its current form. It's in much better shape than it was even 6 months ago. Well, of course, everything 6 months ago was in bad shape.
Yeah, we've been working hard. Contractors have been out in force since the batch plants where they make the hot asphalt have opened up, and our own crews have been out in potholes, and I think we're getting caught up and maybe a little bit ahead. But we still have a lot of road work to do. Contractors are finishing up last year's road program, and we're going to launch this year's road program in a few months, and we'll just keep hammering away at them.
There's also other road projects. Let's talk a little bit about North Street. That's a state project. It's already underway, but there are going to be some city workers out there. There are city workers out there who are doing some sewer work.
There are some adjustments of manholes happening, and yes, the state is scheduled to start working on that this week, and hopefully by the end of next week we'll have a repaved roadway there.
I have to ask, when the state calls you and says, "Hey, we're gonna fix this up for you. I know it's in rough shape. I know a lot of people have complained." When they call and they say, "We're gonna come, we're gonna do this, we'll pay for it," it's got to be a nice breath of fresh air for everyone at City Hall.
It is. However, that is their responsibility. That's their road, and it did take some pushing and shoving to get them to act on it. But thankfully, they came out and checked it out, and they agreed that it needed work, and they're getting to it.
If a car fell in that pothole, it would have landed in China. It was that deep.
It was some rough parts there.
Yeah, it was. How much of that was just, the wear and tear from winter, and how much of it was, a lack of state officials coming in to take care of it?
Well, I think it's accumulated damage over many years, but that winter really did a lot of harm to most of our roadways, and that area between Seymour and the arterial was no exception.
There's also, of course, the Walnut Street Bridge project, the culvert, which is being redone. I'm hearing from people who say it seems to be taking a lot longer than it should have, but I remember we talked about this months ago, and it was the end of, I think it was the end of June it was supposed to wrap up.
That's true, and that's still the schedule. Construction work sometimes appears to not be able to get done on a timely manner, and then the contractors put a lot of resources to it, and they wrap it up. I was out at the Walnut Street Bridge. I call it a bridge now because it's really a substantial structure, and it looks like they're going to come along and be able to meet that schedule.
We're talking with Doug Selby, the city manager for Auburn. We started off talking about the budget. I do want to ask you one more budget question. It just came to me. Because everything is on the web, auburnny.gov, every document is available for the public to consume. Have you had a lot of people calling you or calling City Hall this year asking about this item or that item? Do you get a lot of people who ask specific questions about the budget, or do they probably ask their counselors more often?
I know they do consult with the counselors. My office, I've gotten hardly any calls. And I think that's really a tribute to getting the information out there so that people can see it either at the council meetings or on the website.
What do we talk about beginning in July, since there won't be a budget that will dominate our conversations? What are some of the issues that your office and City Hall overall will be tackling throughout summer and early fall?
Well, we've got several capital projects. The North Division hydropower project, we want to kick that off. We've got an East Genesee Road project. We're still continuing negotiations with one of our bargaining units. We've got plenty on our plate.
Never a dull moment.
No.
And I guess never a break, really. It's just, it's one budget season is almost over, but you know, here comes another season.
But that's what makes my job interesting, and keeps me fascinated with local government, and you know, there's never a dull moment.
And I guess never a boring day.
Nope.
Probably never the same thing twice.
Sometimes that happens.
Okay, well, I guess it happens everywhere. Doug Selby, the city manager for Auburn, will be watching the vote on Thursday, and hopefully you get some vacation time coming up.
I'm looking forward to that.
All right, thanks, Doug. We'll talk to you in July, and we'll be back on the air tomorrow morning with another edition of the Finger Lakes Morning News on 98.1 FM and 1590 AM WAUB.